Hello and welcome to Global Morning. This beautiful Saturday, weather looks really nice, and from Abuja here, we're doing amazingly well, and that's why we want to bring the beauty of today to your screen. I am Aniti Patrick, and of course, we have a whole lot lined up, but I won't be doing this alone, as I have my co-anchor with me in the studio in person of Mutara Kase.
Hello, Anita. Good morning, our viewers. It's a beautiful day, like you rightly said, and it's a weekend, and you know how it is on the weekend. It's always a good time here on Global Television, and this weekend will not be any different, particularly today, obviously.
Of course, and then just tell that we have a lot. That's why we have the touch of similar color to tell you how.
We're rhyming.
How we need this day to look like for you. Of course, we have a whole lot lined up for you in the course of the program today. Like we always do, we have newspaper review segment of the 2027 general elections, where we want everyone to participate and come out to vote.
Most definitely. The primaries are already in order, and today is one of those primaries of the APC. We'll see them. So, of course, vote but not fight is always going to be the theme. So go out and exercise your franchise if you're a party member, but do that within the ambience of the law, most definitely.
Because it's not a do or die affair
at
all. Election is not a do or die affair. It is to ensure that there's proper governance in the system and everyone is being taken care of. But let's quickly turn our focus as we start the day with the newspaper review segment, telling you stories making the rounds across the dailies. Please stay with us. It's good to have you back. Let's quickly tell you stories making the rounds, and of course the lineup of papers we have for the day. We have the Saturday Independent newspaper. We have the Saturday Sun. Of course, we also have the Saturday Tribune newspaper. We also have the Nation. We have Vanguard. We have New Telegraph and the likes lined up for you for your delight. But let's quickly start our stories today, telling you what's happening on the front page cover of the Saturday Independent newspaper, and it comes with the lead story around the Oyo school kidnap, where we have the story there. That's the lead story on this particular paper, and then it talks about government silence raises concerns on readiness to tackle growing insecurity, and that story is on the front page cover of the Saturday Independent newspaper, of course.
And of course, we still have other stories making the round. Let's look above the nameplate. By the left-hand corner, you see a story which borders on politics. It says, Oyo 2027 APC primary, all doubles electoral momentum, shatters expectation. And details you find on page 5 of the Saturday Independent newspaper.
And of course, a whole lot of stories. And if you look at the top above the masthead there, you have stories talking about the 2027. By the right-hand corner there, it says 2027. We have, despite dissenting voices, Tinubu will secure APC ticket. That's Akume speaking there, and that story is on page 7 of the Saturday Independent.
Now let's go below the big story and see a bit of NYC story before we go to the next story. There it says NYC at 53, its contributions to national growth unimaginable, and that is the coordinator speaking. Of course, we know the essence of the NYC and all of that. So, congratulations to 53 years of NYC.
That shows a whole lot of, despite the challenges here and there around the National Youth Service year, because we all had the encounter.
Of course, people have argued that it has outlived its usefulness, but of course, we know it's still a tool of bridging the gap and trying to unite the country. So, 53 years is a very big one.
It's a very big one, and then for the fact that Nigerians have been able to still navigate through these years despite the challenges. It's an amazing one, and we say congratulations to the NYC at 53. But let's quickly tell you other stories just below that particular story before I go to that. It talks about school. ASU braces for fresh crisis with government. And then there's a writer that says demands immediate implementation of unresolved financial obligations. That story is on page 4 of the Saturday Independent paper.
And of course, another story here, which is, it says, I never planned to end this way. Teacher confesses over death of 16-year-old WAEC candidate. And details you find on page 30 of the Saturday Independent newspaper.
Okay, that's really a sad one. That's talking about the school sets exams. That's WAEC, and then that had to result to someone's death.
That's really a sad one.
Sad one.
But of course, I would like to find details on page 30 eventually. Away from that story.
Of course, we have where it says, just at the bottom plate there, it says, Timmy Frank raises fresh alarm over El-Rufai's health and safety, of course. And that story is on page 4 of the Saturday Independent.
And the last story, just a bit of entertainment. It says, the Nollywood caucus system made actors, and that is Toyosi Adesanya speaking on page 9 of the Saturday Independent newspaper. And
that's it about the particular paper. Let's turn our focus and look at stories making the rounds on the Saturday Sun newspaper. Saturday Sun newspaper comes with its own lead story away from the education and also the Oyo kidnap we had from the Saturday Independent there. It talks about the Ebola case there, because we've seen that in DR Congo. And of course now Nigeria is paying a deep attention to all of this. And it says Ebola spreads panic in Nigeria, where we have the writer saying doctors on red alert as NCDC states heighten surveillance at borders, and that story is on page 22.
Of course, there's reason to be panicking, because Ebola, we know, is quite deadly, and we don't want that getting into Nigeria. But I like the fact that the NCDC has been proactive in trying to make sure it doesn't get into the country, and we hope it doesn't get to Nigeria.
That story is actually on page 23.
Most definitely on page 23. And just let's go below that story before we go above the mass. It says, courts voiding of INEC's timetable. Opposition parties, lawyers, hail judiciary, knock INEC. And it has two riders. The first one says, legal experts say INEC overstepped constitutional boundaries. The second rider says, electoral body heads to appeal court. And details of the story you find on page 22 of the Saturday Sun newspaper.
And of course, let's go above the nameplate there. We have stories really making the rounds. And then let's start from the right-hand corner there. It says Lagos rakes in 2.6 trillion naira revenue, hits 1.87 trillion naira IGR in 1 year. That story is on page 25. Telling you how much more we've seen.
Of course, Lagos is one of the fourth largest economy in Africa, as just a state, not even the country. So it's a very big one, and it's still continuing its thriving economy, and we hope that translates to better life for Lagosians and Nigerians in general.
Of course, we look forward to seeing how that translates actually to living standards, because if you go across some part of the states, you still see where there's a whole lot more to be done to give people the better life they need.
You'd hear we talk about IGRs, but we don't talk about per capita income, which is the real indices measuring the standard of people's living, and we hope that improves in Lagos State and across the country. But away from that story, but sticking to business, this time with the Eid celebration, it says, days to Salah, Ram market awaits buyers, and it has from riders there which talk about the expensive nature of the sacrifice this year. I've seen where they said it's up to even 500,000 for rams and all of that. So it's quite. We just hope that we get.
Well, the whole lot of price, because we have brother that says traders bemoan low patronage as prospective customers lament the prohibitive cost of the RAM itself.
Honestly.
And of course, we'll still have other ones that says we're hopeful we'll have better sales by Monday and Tuesday, and that's the sellers speaking there.
And the buyers are saying we're hopeful that the prices will go down so we can afford them.
And
too.
they are also looking at the low patronage, the traders themselves. I was coming to the office and I saw a whole lot of rams lined up in one market close to my way coming down, and then I was like, how much is this, and how much can people afford to buy a ram? And some people are even preferring to do a collective.
You have got to the collective sacrifice, even though you cannot do that with the ram, is with the cow. People would rather go for the cow and share because it's much more affordable. Because if the ram will go for 500, 600, you could
how many pieces are you getting?
You get the point. So we just have to have human face in our businesses by considering the people, especially in this moment. It's a moment of sacrifice, so let's all sacrifice.
Let's sacrifice and pay the price.
Exactly.
Well, that's it on that particular story. Away from that as well.
Yes, and away from that story, one here says, church usher to die by hanging for killing girlfriend. Details you find on page 2 of the Saturday Sun newspaper.
And of course, just beside that, we have I wasted ransom collected from my victim's dad on sports betting. And then we have the writer that says Ogun teacher nabbed for adopting, killing former students, confesses. That story is on page 6.
That's not a pleasant one.
And a bit of entertainment, we have the beautiful Linda Ejiofor Suleiman there speaking about her role in the entertainment. That's the Nollywood industry. She's tired. I'm tired of playing the good girl roles. I'm looking forward to seeing her playing other roles.
Girl's role.
Because she's an amazing actor, and you should give it to her for her artistry when it comes
Most
to
definitely,
acting.
she was one of the finest in the Nollywood industry, undoubtedly. And that brings us to the end of the stories on the Saturday Sun. And it's time for us to go to our next paper, which is the Saturday Tribune newspaper. And it has a whole lot of stories. And the leading story here is saying Salah, Muslims groan as price of ram hits roof. Medium for 400,000, big for 2.5 million. And we have some of the quotes from the buyers and sellers there. Details of this particular story you find on page 6 of the Saturday Tribune newspaper.
Okay, so I'm looking out for this sizes, and I'm going to wait for you to bring this out.
That's not going to be an easy one, but of course, like I said earlier, we hope to be able to afford, because we have
There's
to.
a whole lot of quotations, a whole lot of concern towards getting this for the sacrifice, and also to the Muslim brothers to enjoy the essence of the Salah. But let's go above that story, above the masthead there on the right-hand corner, still talking about politics and elections. And this is the build-up to Ekiti election, governorship election.
And also the one in Osun State.
Yeah, happening June 20th.
Yes.
And then it says Ekiti Osun. Osun is also getting set as well. Ekiti Osun governorship polls will test INEC's readiness for 2027 election. That's Amopiton speaking. And of course, we know that he came into office, and that was the build-up to Anambra election. And so it was just the finishing touches he had to do to also try. But this is him fully and actively involved for Ekiti and Osun. So
and of course, even after the Anambra, I think there was the elections in FCT here.
Yes,
and
area council elections.
Yes, and one in, I think, Rivers State. So INEC has been having litmus tests, if you like, for elections. And this is one of them. And we hope that whatever it is they have been working on, they get to perfect it all ahead of the 2027 general elections.
And away from that, beside that story that you have, it says how our Fulani Guard organized our kidnap and shot one of us in the neck. Victim tells Oyo Court, and that story is on page 10.
Not a pleasant one. Moving away from that, just by the left-hand corner, you see a story that says Nigeria is suffering epidemic of insecurity, epidemic of death. That is Professor Toyin Falola speaking on page 3, or page 11 rather, of the Saturday Tribune newspaper. And
of course, below the lead story there, we have stories just down there that talks about appeal court holds Accord ADC 3 other parties. The registration suit adjourns case till 27 October. And that story is on page 6.
And away from that story, still talking security, it says insecurity as the kicker. Oyo government suspends school excursions, field trips into school sports, with a rider here that says slain teacher buried in Ogbomosho. And details you find on page 4. of the Saturday Tribune newspaper.
And of course, that is very very necessary step to put out because of the insecurity, of course, all this kidnap that happened on your own style story, the Daily Independent, the Saturday Independent that talked about that challenge there. And of course, away from that, we have a story from the human angle side where it talks about my husband abandoned me on a wedding night to attend political meeting. I want our marriage dissolved. Story on page 12 and 21. Well,
was that enough reason to want to annul your marriage? Because who knows if a political meeting would give you funds to sustain the marriage?
Okay, so let's not.
What do women really want?
We want attention.
What do women really want?
Yeah, on wedding night.
If you have I saw a question saying if you have a contract on your wedding day, and would you go ahead with that wedding or will you go for the contract? And people were bearing their minds.
That gives a platform for arguments, opinions, and all that. So it's normal. People see things differently. I think basically what I've just been understanding. But
for me, if this is the particular incident, I think she has gone overboard. Except if it's
something
one of those
beyond
reasons,
that.
of course. But,
something beyond that, of course.
Let's move away from that.
And tell you other stories with the lead page cover of that's the story. That's the month of the Saturday of Tribune. Let's go to the Nation and see what the Nation has for us. The Nation starts with the lead story there, and it's still, of course, with the build-up of the primaries and, of course, 2027 election. Says Mufang Wadada Galadima Danladi win APC Gubo primaries. And of course, we have the Rider that says triumph in Plateau, Nasara, Adamawa, Kwara contest. We also have Baba Wali beat 6 others, big tickets in Yobe. Abdulrazak dumps preferred aspirants in last minute U-turn. You know, that's the interesting thing about politics, and
it's all about the interest, of course. Because like in Kwara State, that's Abdulrazak, there was a candidate that was seen as the successor, and then all of a sudden it's now been zoned to the northern part of the Kwara State with another person taking that position. So yes, that shows how dynamic and very unpredictable our polity is in Nigeria.
And that story is on page 4 of the Nation newspaper, and of course there you have a picture story there of the aspirants who are contested for the primaries, the primaries there, showing the various states there as well. And just below that, we have the story of Oyo, of course. This story is really all over, and it's been a whole lot of concern. There it says, TSS teacher killed in Oyo school attack is buried. And of course, we see the picture story showing a whole lot of what played out, of course.
And our heart goes out to the family of the bereaved and the teacher who was lost in this very sad incident.
And then Lily also talking about teachers and all that. We saw this also in the other paper where it says how teacher lured, kidnapped, killed teenager while candidate.
That's it's disturbing, honestly, because as a teacher you're supposed to be a protector of this
and how do the trust the student trust them?
Aside their parents, you are supposed to be the next in line because they go to school, you teach them, you instill morals in them, and then this is what eventually happen. That's not even
that shows a whole lot of debt conscience.
We have a lot of debt conscience.
A lot of need to pay attention to people's psychology to know what is happening.
And that shows,
around
of
us.
course, we also have to be very vigilant as parents,
parents.
In the kind of schools you take your kids and the people you entrust your words in.
So let's go above the masthead and tell you all the stories. The leading, of course, where it starts with the right-hand corner there says INEC will review court verdicts on election timetable before taking action. And of course, we have the writer that says Youth Party denies authorizing suits, and the story is on page 28.
And of course, just by the left-hand corner, a story here says governors, Akume, others mobilize for Tinubu ahead of APC presidential nomination. And there's a writer that says party to hold direct primary in 8,809 wards nationwide. And details you find on page 5 of the Nation's newspaper.
Okay, so this is a bit of a human angle and sad one. We're celebrating NYC at 53, but here we have a sad story. Why it talks about why NYC member allegedly stabbed billionaire father to death in Abuja, and that story is on page 13.
He's talked about dead conscience, and this is what it is, because this is a person who gave birth to you.
And this could play in different scenarios. It could be the father wants it. I'm just thinking, It could be different scenarios leading to this. It could be the relationship between both of them. It could be the father also wanting him to learn the process and not just jumping into getting it. It could be peer pressure. A whole lot of things could surround this particular scenario that just played out.
Most definitely, and with, we talked about peer pressure. Teenagers are going through a lot, and young people generally are going through a lot. But then, your parents, for me, is a line you never cross, regardless of whatever it is they've done to you. They bettered you, they gave you life, and they've made you who you are, basically. So that's, you should never repay them with such and
so in my head, I'm thinking, now that you've started the father, who takes care of you?
That's the question he will ask himself.
Because now you're in the public space, you love bashing, allegation, although it's until proved guilty.
Of course.
Like you said, it's alleged to know that still innocent until proved guilty. Well, that story there is on page 13. Let's quickly tell you the last story down there. It talks about Nigerians, others seeking U.S. green cards must return home to apply. And that story is on page 2. Okay? Well, you've heard it there. If you
people down to Jaguar,
you didn't come back home to get
exactly.
it. And that's the much with the Nation newspaper. Let's turn our focus to the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Saturday Vanguard newspaper, of course, starts its own story. Of course, it talks about the Yoruba land no longer safe. Terrorist cells spreading. Story on page 10 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper.
And of course, below that story, you see one that says, Gani Adams, I have capacity to end kidnapping in Southwest. And riders say situation now frightening, and that's Southwest leader speaking. Another rider says, our governors should prioritize identity, map vulnerable border communities. And all of this, you find details on page 8 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Okay,
so he's saying Gani Adams saying he has the capacity to end kidnapping in Southwest. Okay,
let's see him bring his ideas. Of course,
because at some point it was in the Northeast we're worried about the issue of insecurity, but now it's a whole different game.
That's why people raised alarm when we saw insecurity in places like Kwara State, because it's like the gateway to the southwest part of Nigeria, and we've seen that it's getting to the southwest. So we just hope this is nipped in the bud before it becomes a very much more worrying than it currently is.
See right now. All right, so let's see other stories there where it talks about the 2027 presidency. We have where it says 12 contenders, 12 contenders, dark horses. Tinubu's job. Story on page 13. And of course, it's a democratic space. We should see a position.
That's the essence of primaries. Test your popularity. If you feel you're more popular than the president and you're able to get those votes. Let's see how it pans out in the APC primaries. I'm still talking about primaries. Below that story, you see one that says APC primaries, more hisses than cheers as fraud fury taints process. And details you find on page 18 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper.
And of course, we have where it says, beside that story, it says memoirs, how I confronted Joe Garba on his plot to overthrow me. That's Go On Speaking, story on page 14, of course, of the Saturday Vanguard. And above that, we have other stories there where it talks about scandal of spotlight. What's next for Chike's career, page 19, and that's one of the musicians there who had his own drama playing out across the news, of course. And we've seen this other story as well. We'll just want to take it, but let's talk about the one on the left hand side, the extreme end there. It says, from abundance to scarcity, how climate change is hurting Nigerian farmers. Story on page 25 of the Saturday Vanguard.
Of course, climate change is a problem, but we hope that is solved and we get to find solutions and have abundant harvest for all Nigerians.
Well, that's the much with it, of course. If you look at that picture, that lineup, you have APC Guba candidates, the lineup of who and who have emerged as candidates
across different states.
So pick up a copy and get to find out what and who actually got the ticket. Let's turn our focus to the Guardian newspaper, the Guardian Weekend. The Guardian Weekend has its own story, and I like where these pictures are displayed. Talks about the post-primary elections, the lead up to that. It says APC, House of Consolidation or Disintegration. And of course, you have pictures of the president of the Senate, the APC national chairman. You also have the governor's forum
of
and the
Kwara
Kwara State governor
yes.
as well. We also have the Speaker of the House of Representatives. All of that telling you to find out what it's really standing for after
You
the
find answers, possibly answers to that question. Is APC House of Consolidation or disintegration?
So that story is on page 4
and
5 of the Guardian Weekend.
And below that story, you see one that says Lagos records 61.5 to success in WAEC, pays 1.4 billion naira WAEC fees for 45,598 students. And details you find on page 36 of the Guardian Weekend newspaper. And away from that story, we see one that says Governor Mba showcases scorecard, declares readiness to do more. And details you find on page 30 of the Guardian newspaper.
And of course, a whole lot of stories happening there. If you go below that, on the right-hand corner there, it says Supreme Court affirms acquittal of General Otiki. And that story is on page 30, of course. And also beside that story there, it talks about Ogun strengthens measures against infrastructure vandals amid renewed electricity drive and unveils plan to empower 100,000 residents through monthly cash transfer. And that story is on page 3.
And away from that story, by the left-hand corner, it says how seniority question deepens Nigeria's 1966 crisis. Go on speaking. And the writer says Ojukwu driven by personal ambition. And details you find on page 2 of the Guardian Weekend newspaper.
Okay, so there's a story there on the bottom plate there before we take the last two stories above the nameplate there. It says even some NADECO members wanted me to stay longer. And that's inside stuff on the back page cover where you can pick up to find out what's that. But let's look at both the nameplates there where it talks about Makanjola's enduring legacies resonates in Lifetime Achievement Award. And that's on the spotlight part of the Guardian Weekend, of course. And on
the last story it says Judge Izunwa as the kicker. Judiciary is the greatest challenge to credible elections in Nigeria, and that is an interview which you find on page 20 of the Guardian Weekend edition.
And of course, that's the much with that particular paper. Let's now focus to the Weekend Trust paper. I always like the infographics, of course, and there, of course, it gives you the best. And then it talks about the APC primaries, triumphs, upsets, and fallout. Picture story there. You see the reaction of people's faces. You
some are smiling, some are not happy.
Some are not happy. Some are looking downcasted.
Which is expected.
You know, it's expected because, like someone said, sports is the biggest election now.
Yes.
Because election has to do with sportsmanship spirits. If
course.
you win, you smile. If you lose, find a balance.
Especially with primary elections, because it's all an internal affair. So when you are not selected, you should not just be in disarray. You can support the person who emerged for your party to be victorious in the election generally.
Okay.
And away from that story, go above the nameplate by the right-hand corner. It says Caro Abattoir, the nightmare of butcher and residents. Details you find on page 13 of the Weekend Trust newspaper. Another story here by the middle story says ADC primaries battle in Benue Plateau as Bindo withdraws. And details you find on page 8 of the Weekend Trust newspaper.
And of course, we have where it says how thugs killed 7 persons in 1 week in Kano. That's a bit of a concern there, and that story is on page 22. We look forward to hoping the security agencies will look into
in the bud so it doesn't get worse than it is,
yes.
like we always like to say.
Of course, 7 persons in 1 week is like 1 per day.
Yes.
Making it 7 days in a week.
Most definitely.
It's something to pay attention to. And then below the infographic story there we have it says homes, restaurants endanger lives with rotten tomatoes. And that story is on page 19. Of course, you hear people say, give me
Baje, because it's cheaper, but it's cheaper better for you, because if you are going for cheaper, what about your own health? You might think it's cheaper, but then in the long run, you get to even spend more on taking care of
Taking care of
yourself and
yourself because of
treatment.
that.
So which means in the long run, it's not even cheaper; it's more expensive.
It's because you're treating, you're
Because
spending more.
you're spending money on medicine and all of that. So it's better to be able to close your eyes and buy the ones that are good, to protect your overall health.
All right. So below that story, rather, we have this other story that talks about
the last story.
Yes.
It says Ngozi as the kicker 2 months after families await rescue of abductees. And details you find on page 8 of the Weekend Trust newspaper.
Okay, so let's move to our last paper for the day. It talks about Saturday Telegraph newspaper, which is our last paper, where it talks about the laughing Gani Adams, Akintola, Afenifere, speaking on kidnapping, of course, in the southwest. It says kidnappings, killings in southwest must stop now. And we have the writers that says abductions, destruction of lives by terrorists have reached intolerable levels. We have Lagos is their ultimate target. Insurgents mustn't be allowed to have foothold in Yoruba land. We also have where it says my daughter is only 4. I'm appealing for her release, and mom of kidnapped child speaking. Story on page 2, 6 and 26, of course.
Let's move away from security to politics, where by the right-hand corner you see a story that says Hayatuddin challenges Atiku Amechi to commit to ADC's code of ethics. And that story you find on page 6 of the Saturday Telegraph newspaper. And
still staying with that, we have, it says presidency, APC fails to reach consensus, adopts direct primaries.
And of course, still talking APC, says APC as the kicker, 7 governors, 11 ex-governors join Akpabio, Okowa, Yari, Oshomole in clinching Senate ticket. Details you find on page 5.
And of course, below the bottom plate there, let me take the one by the left-hand side before we go to the bottom plate. It says, ahead of primaries, NDC constitutes 20-member National Selection Committee. And then we have right that says, our leaders denied access to Erify, ADC speaking there. And then that's on page 5 and 7, of course. And below the bottom plate there.
Yes, the bottom story says, Supreme Court affirms Gombe-led SDP leadership nullifies appeals court judgment restoring Gabam, and details you find on page 7.
So let's quickly wrap up with some business story above the nameplates there. We saw this earlier across all papers with the Lagos generation of Ajara as well. Yes. But let's talk about what the CBN is doing. It says court grants CBN sole ownership of e-Naira platforms, and that story is on page 7 of the Saturday Telegraph newspaper. And then that's the wrap on this particular segment of the dailies, where we brought you a whole lot of stories making the rounds across the different papers. So you have a whole lot across the sectors, from economy, security, political angle, education, all of that, all inclusive. So pick up a copy of the dailies.
So you get the details and get the juicy details to find out, like they say, you have to stay informed so you don't get deformed.
And of course, that's why we're bringing you that to keep you abreast. Well, up next is our discussion segment. But before we do that, let's quickly tell you what we have for taste and texture today for you to start up your day on a very beautiful breakfast. Stay with us.
Hello everyone and welcome to Taste and Texture. Today, we're going to prepare a delicious Nigerian delicacy and we will be demonstrating it from scratch. Our delicacy on this episode is beans cake and pap. I am your creative chef, Saadatu Garba. Beans cake, popularly known as akara, and pap is one of the traditional breakfast options in a Nigerian household. Akara and pap is a hearty morning meal for most homes because of its light and filling nature. It is a delicacy made from beans, while pap is made from maize. I hope you enjoy the recipe. Ingredients: beans, red bell peppers and scotch bonnets, onions, vegetable oil, salt and water. The ingredients for pap include pap, water, canned or powdered milk, and sugar. To prepare, wash and peel your beans. Add your beans, onions, and peppers into the blender. Add a little water and blend till smooth. After blending, transfer into a bowl and use a mixer or a spatula to beat the mixture to make it fluffy. Add some onions to your oil to make it flavorful. Fry your akara in batches until golden brown and transfer to strain the excess oil. To make your pap, put the raw pap into a bowl. Add a little bit of cold water, then mix. Boil your water and quickly add into the mixture while turning to avoid lumps. Add your milk and sugar and your pap is ready. That's it on today's episode of Taste and Texture, and I hope you will try this recipe on your own. I'll see you again on the next creative recipe. This is Saadatu Garba saying take care of yourself.
Wake up with Global Morning, your daily guide to what's happening and making the rounds.
We delve into headlines, newspaper reviews, spot-on analysis, policies, current events, real talk, real issues that affect us all.
From the latest trends to the debates, every topic, every angle, Global Morning is where it all starts.
Global Morning,
For the latest issues,
always on point.
Watch Global Morning Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Global Television.
In an age of breaking news, you need a trusted source that prioritizes accurate, factual, and unbiased reporting. This is AM News, and I am Ubong Usoro.
On Global Television, our news is rooted in verified and authoritative storytelling that keeps you educated, informed, and enlightened on all the issues that matter to you. I am Sadia Yakubu. This is Midday News.
You can trust
What a beautiful delicacy to start the weekend with. I wish I was not here, because if I try this right now, Mukhtar is laughing at me. If I try this right now, I'm sure I'm just going to go lie down and just rest my head. But for you at home watching at the moment, is a beautiful delicacy to try. Very easy to make, and takes few steps, and then you're there, Mukhtar.
Most definitely, like you said, you just took the word right out of my mouth. With the fact that it's a delicacy that one actually can have for a great breakfast, easy to prepare and delicious, sumptuous. And of course, if you do that, if you're at home, you could just go take your morning nap. I'm
telling you, very, very beautiful nap to start your day with. But try it. That's one of the reasons why we bring you these delicacies to save your head. You know, it's the weekend and you want to relax. So with this lined up for you, you can actually just take it, do the staycation like Mukhtar likes to do. We call it kose in the north.
Of course. Akara.
And akara, a general term, that's what it's known for. But it's bean cake in English terms. That's what it's called. And we have the pap there. It's made of millet. We have the millet, we have the corn, which gives you the variety of what you want to
Some people actually like to mix both. And that's another
really? Yeah, I think I need to try that, not the mixture.
I have tried that. And
how was it?
Very delicious, actually.
Okay. So that's something I'm going to work on. Well, there you have it with taste and texture. And of course, we wanted you to have breakfast because the conversation is very important and we need to pay attention. Please stay with us because our guest is standing by to join us shortly.
In an age of breaking news, you need a trusted source that prioritizes accurate, factual, and unbiased reporting. This is AM News, and I am Ubong Usoro.
On global television, our news is rooted in verified and authoritative storytelling that keeps you educated, informed, and enlightened on all the issues that matter to you. I am Sadia Yakubu. This is Midday News.
You can trust our multi-platform news broadcast real-time and fast-check stories for all the big local and foreign headlines round the clock. I am Ramsey Enoch Agbo. This is News Express.
Our array of anchors delivers the news to our teeming viewers, breaking it down with context and perspective. This is News Cycle on global television. I am Anieti Patrick.
And the flagship news is your hub for the day's most engaging stories. This is News Prime, and I am Jumai Manson.
Did you miss any of our news rounds? No worries. Catch up at 10 p.m. and midnight, 7 days of the week. I am Mukhtar Kasim.
Global TV is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. We're active across all social media platforms at Global TV NG.
Global TV News, accurate and unbiased. I'm Uyi Agmofwebe.
At Erojim Shoe Factory, excellence starts from the ground up. Located at number 1 Pound Road behind Nigeria Correctional Service, Aba, Abia State. We produce 1,500 high-quality shoes every single day. Paramilitary shoes, safety boots, desert boots, ankle shoes, back-to-school footwear. All crafted with state-of-the-art equipment and built for strength, comfort, and durability. For reliable footwear that stands the test of time, choose Erojim Shoes for better product, strong steps, smart style. For inquiries, call 091-264-53399 or 070-3009-3944 or 080-6573-8374 or or call 081-3167-3668. Email info@aerogym.com. Website www.aerogymdesign.com. Aerogym. Walk with confidence. Walk with pride.
It's good to have you join us back on Global Morning, and it's high time we have that discussion we told you earlier on the build-up to the program. Let's tell you that on this segment, another engaging edition of the Global Morning, your platform where we bring you all the informed conversations around issues shaping Nigeria and the wider African continent. And of course, I'm Slanete Patrick, and Mukhtar is still here with me.
Yes, I am. It's great to have you back on the program.
Of course, Mukhtar is still here. Let's tell you stories around the political landscape and how we want to see the build-up to the 2027 general elections. Across Nigeria's political landscape, major political parties have continued to conduct primaries and internal consultations ahead of crucial off-cycle governorship elections, and of course the wider permutations towards the 2027 general elections. Of course, Mukhtar.
Of course, those elections have raised questions around transparency, around the delegate influence. We've also had questions about consensus arrangement, internal parties, and all of those internal discipline, and how power and money shape the entire process.
Of course, and then see how this determines all that. We have candidates also trying to see what that looks like. But today on the program, we'll review the recent primaries conducted by political parties across the country, the lessons emerging from the exercise, and what they could mean for Nigeria's democratic future. And of course, joining us this morning to have this conversation is the Regional General Secretary of the West African Civil Society Forum, in person of James Ugochukwu. It's good to have you join us on the program today, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, amazing to have you join us, because this has to do with the regional West African Region Civil Society Group. Talks about how the civil society basically is looking at the party primaries and the build-up to 2027 general elections. Talk about internal democracy, transparency, just like Mutero talked about. All of this are concerns we're looking forward to 2027 general election. Mutero wants to begin.
Let's begin broadly, because across several political parties, we've seen complaints ranging from alleged candidates rigging to manipulating of the delegates, and of course court disputes have also marred the process. So from your observation, what do you think, what's your assessment of the overall primary elections that have been going on so far?
Okay, I think when it comes to the primaries that are taking place across Nigeria now, the party primaries, are three key takeaways from it. One is that we are having more of inter-party conflict than inter-party conflict. And I'll explain why. You see that in most states now, we are having challenges of the incumbency factor. You know, the incumbent governors try to affirm their hold on the party. They are still having godfathers, trying to press their demand and the like, and you discover that in most cases they're having challenges of internal party crisis than even looking at what other parties are looking at. And of course, we still have the issue of incumbency factor that I said before. For instance, now the gambit that was thrown to the National Assembly is something that looks as if we are going to have automatic ticket.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we were all pushed to their state governors now to decide their fate. So now we have a situation where the governors are mindful of who they put in the Senate, because recall that the National Assembly is the retirement home of most of these governors. So they will not want somebody that will not vacate the seat for them when they want it. So most of them that were expecting automatic ticket ended up not getting it. As we speak now, about 70 members of National Assemblies, including House of Reps and
the
Senate incumbent, did not pass their party primaries.
100 of them?
Above the 100 now.
Yes.
Okay. So most of the big names they are not there any longer. So now we'll still have a situation whereby some people that they are hopeful that they will get to that place are not there. So these are the challenges that especially in the ruling parties are facing. Then we look at the issues of transparency. We had stories of party primaries not even being conducted allegedly at the venue that is supposed to be. I had a friend that suffered that fate, that they put the party primaries in a particular place and nobody turned up in that place, and at the end of the day, the winner was announced or something like that. So it calls to question if we are growing in our political system or something. So these are the key issues. Then, in terms of opposition party, the failure of opposition party to rally around within one political party umbrella becomes a problem. So there's this factionalization from this political party, from the other, and at the end of the day, we are still having more of them splitting into new ones.
Yes.
Thereby, disaggregating the whole thing. And at the end of the day, we can't say that this is a particular formidable force that is there to play the opposition politics. So everybody is trying to, grab their own domain and, assert their importance. Some are even bringing the calculation of whether the zoning should be to the south or to the north and all that, and that is bringing a lot of dichotomy. And then with all this thing happening, I think it's giving a huge advantage to the ruling party, because a weak opposition will give them a huge advantage. So these are the key things that I think I've seen so far.
So I like the fact that you talked about how this has actually, because we saw in the papers today where you talked about either a divide or or integration,
especially
of
the APC
primaries. So let's talk about, would you say the political parties have improved in strengthening their internal democracy? Because you've talked about all of this, and compared to previous election, where we see primaries across the parties, and internal democracy is one, let me call it gospel, that is being preached across from INEC stakeholders, because if the political parties get it wrong, of course, the system would have its own fragmentations here and there.
Well, what we are seeing so far looks as if it's a mix of both, right? It's a mix of both in the sense that if we look at it from different angles, we look at it from the angle of position of candidate. We cannot say that the ruling party has imposed candidates in the sense that we've seen strong members of the National Assembly, vocal ones that have missed their seat now, they didn't come back and all that. Then from the other side, in terms of process now, how do you reconcile what I said earlier with the fact that the election apparently or allegedly did not take place in some places, and of course results have been announced. A place like Ekiti Central now, there was even report of armed attack in the polling unit where they shot in the air, and then at the end of the day, they announced result. The president member of the Senate that is representing Ekiti Central did not make it back to the National Assembly. So now, if you put that side by side with what I've said earlier now, it becomes a mix of confusion to say, okay, we are getting internal party democracy or not. So it's a bit of this and a bit of that. In some ways or in some states, they had it smooth and everybody agreed. The other ones, there are a lot of alleged manipulation. And that points to the fact that in the country, we are yet to have political parties. What we have are political personalities. Because the political personality
determines the need of people.
Get to that place. So it's still a far cry from party democracy or internal party democracy as supposed to be.
So now that we see internal democracy having a lot of issues across the party lines, because the different parties, we have most of them who are standing strong right now. We have the APC, the PDP, the ADC, NDC, and they still have their issues around them. Because we've seen people showing excitement, people showing worries of concerns that if my own party cannot support me to come out, well, because let me take it back to the National Assembly. If certain percentage of them have lost their seats right now, we look out for legislations, motions, bills, and this has to do with experience for lawmaking. In eventuality right now, like you said, the big names, yes, they've been from time immemorial or quite a long time, some 12 years, some 3, 4 tenures in the position. But if we have this experience and been flushed out, what happens to our lawmaking process with inexperienced lawmakers who will go back to training and retraining? That's where I'm looking at the concerns.
Well, there's nothing strange there. Nigeria has a culture of not respecting experienced brains or hands. It happens everywhere, in the military, in the police, and all that. You and I know that if they appoint a chief of defense staff now from a lower rank, everybody at the top, irrespective of the training and everything, will go. Same goes with police and all that. So I think you've answered the question partly. By the time they come in, we'll still have some experienced ones that are coming back, even if it's 1-termers or 2-termers. We still have experienced ones that are coming. Then those that are not experienced, more money will be spent, more taxpayers' money. Let me be emphatic. Will be used to train them, you know. And again, this is democracy. So if you are a long-termer and you are a chronic underperformer, and you don't affect the people, of course they will show you the way out. So the long-termer started one day, so the new-termer too. They will learn when they
that's what people have said, because it's a democracy, like you rightly said, and some people have said these people have been there for a long time.
And they are not impacting. In fact, there's a particular senator from the Southeast, I won't mention his name, very vocal in National Assembly. People say it's really Koga, it's enough, you've been there for 20 years, we don't want you back again. Even before they go into primaries.
They had told them straight up.
Yeah, exactly. So we say youth are the leaders of tomorrow. When is it tomorrow?
For the leaders.
When somebody will stay maybe at the age of 40, who spent 20 years in the Senate.
That's 60.
That's 60 years. So what happens to a child that was born the day he entered Senate? The person is already 20
years. When is he going to get his own
the leadership?
Well, this helps us find a way around the electoral process, basically. It helps Nigerians start to have a mindset of the kind of leaders and the kind of democracy they want to see, of course, and it starts with the party lines, of course, Mute.
Of course, another concern we've heard is about the consensus arrangement, and others have opted for direct primaries through their delegates. So from your own perspective, do you think this particular process is helping our democracy and or is
competence? Of course, the person can go that way. Then the direct primaries now is a larger democratic process of it. So I think in all this, each state, they adopt the one that works best for them. But for me, I think I'll go for the larger delegate direct primaries where all of them will come. But talking about that, we saw...
Because some dispatchers have said they're doing that to cut costs. And save cost basically is why they are going for the consensus candidate.
And then they're looking at the weakening, if it's weakening the system for them or not.
No, the thing is that we don't really have political parties as I keep saying. Because, if not now that they are forcing, or the electoral act is forcing them to have registers. Most of them don't have registers. You understand? So now, if I'm a member of a political party and I believe in the ideology of the political party and I like what it stands for, you don't need to spend much money for me to come and work towards the progress of the party. Now, look at the, what do we call it now? These particular primaries they did now. What we saw online, we don't know if it's a social media skit or real, you know. The same direct primary to accounting from 200 to 350, 201, 350, like that at the end of the day. So, with that kind of a rigged system, you can say that, okay, it's just a Mickey Mouse primary show. At the end of the day, somebody has been rigged out by that kind of process. So it's high time that the political parties start coming together to, you know, hold an ideology of integrity and purpose, so that at the end of the day, both the members will not be aggrieved. Of course, if people were openly rigged out like that, the next thing they will start doing is to look for the next political
Where they will jump into.
I like the fact that you talked about this, because some Nigerians who believe that the party primaries are already determining what 2027 general election will be like, following just what you said. We don't know if it's social media pranks or if it's just what they want, because we've seen public opinions on this, and that is kind of fine-tuning the perception of Nigerians with the build-up to 2027 general election. How will the process be like? And I'm worried about the perception. Do you see this perception affecting the confidence of Nigerians who would generally want to come out to vote on election
Because
day?
would they be like, why go out to vote when it's already it's like a predetermined process?
Well, the thing there is that it's just like somebody, living in the rainy season. It's going to rain by the way. So what do? Are you going to leave your items in the rain for rain to beat it, or you take it out? So these are ugly signals that are coming.
Yeah.
So ignoring it by Nigeria is not going to solve any problem, because it's going to worsen it if people emerge through a rigged process. Don't expect them to come and perform. So it behoves on Nigeria, and it's a multi-stakeholder affair: the media, the civil society, the security, everybody involved, including the INEC, the election management body. Everybody that is involved in the process of election should be able to say, okay, this is what is not going well. How can we correct it?
Okay.
Now, if we have the corruption of option A4, because option A4 is the one that you line up and they count it. And that's what happened during the primaries, is complete corruption of option A4. When they did it in 1993, MK Abiola emerged, as the president there. I saw it then as a very young guy. I went to the polling unit to just observe, even though I couldn't vote then. People lined up and, they counted. In fact, there was a man that lost by 1 vote. So the last person there started beating the man up, you understand? But that's how to tell you how transparent the issue is. So now that we've seen the signal coming, people should now arm up themselves and activate their vigilance to ensure that as they are going to the polling units, they
Prepare their minds as well.
prepare their mind to protect the mandate of whoever they are voting for, so that the person will not be rigged out. And of course, if you don't turn out as a voter, you even make it easier for emerges winner. Or even if the person want to lose, let the person lose through a free and fair process, not through a rigged process. Are you ready to confront and contain and curtail the talks and all the political miscreant that will be coming to dissolve the process? So these are the things that Nigerians should not wish away, because it's going to happen. Vote buying is going to be there. Thuggery and the ballot box snatching, all these things are something that the citizens should be prepared to counter, because it will definitely happen.
Another issue that has been raising concern, and you mentioned vote buying and all of that, is how expensive the concerns as to how expensive democracy is becoming. And when I say expensive, it also leads to the issue of inclusivity. Process is this expensive?
I think YouTube participate. How many young people are even employed in the first place? We are looking at young people that they didn't really study in school. They just got the job because they want to survive. Now, if you ask the person to bring 10 million naira to buy a nomination form, or 20 million naira, that is compete in this.
Yes.
So if you look at all this, you discover that when somebody spends that much, the result
70 people.
70 people. Now, the period you take them to recoup their investment will be almost 3 years gone in the tenure. Then the next money they are gathering is for the next election. So that's why I see our we just is for us to reduce the cost of all this. It doesn't need to be that humongous that will not exclude a lot of people.
Oh, well, I like the fact that you talked about money politics, internal democracy. All of this are one's bus stop we cannot just stray away, because we always get to this bus stop. But concerns are how deeply has this money politics really affected the internal democracy in Nigeria? Talking about the fact that you talk about exclusion and all that from persons, do you think the ordinary party members still have influence in picking out their candidates or determining their candidates because of this, the way money politics plays within the party system? Because we've seen that, like I said, when we had the dailies, we saw the expression of people, of the party members when the party primaries were conducted. Some reflected you've also mentioned that elections today in Nigeria is looking like the elites kind of thing. So how can the civil society groups, the media, because it's a multi-stakeholder thing, like you mentioned, find a way of getting this out of the way for an all-inclusive political space for Nigerians, or have political party structures become too controlled by this elite interest, basically?
Well, the first thing is the members themselves immersed in the corrupt system. Because if you are in a system that is not working the way you want, I think the least you can do is to speak up. So most of them don't speak up, they don't speak out. So now you have members that is okay, the Godfather has said this is the person we want. You know that this person is not good. You know that this person will not be able to perform. But because some money will change hands before the primaries, you go and collect the money and you vote the person by anyway. And at the end of the day, you start crying that things are not working. You are part of the process, right? So now, what we need more than anything is mindset retuning, right? Mindset retuning for everyone, with proper orientation. And I hope it will work. We're looking at other stakeholders taking part in this. Media, the civil society, the religious leaders, the traditional rulers, but sadly all these people I've mentioned can easily be influenced by this political class. So I think this solution is thinking out of the box.
Total overhauling of the system.
Overhauling of the system. Because we need to change our mindset. Because all this financial inducement that happens is for temporary gain. So when you get the money for some time, at the end of the day, you see that you still return back to the same system.
You suffer for a longer time.
Because as we speak now, there's no special market for any party members. There's no special market for
hospitals.
No special hospital, no special service for anybody. At the end of the day, by the time you are done collecting that inducement, you come and face reality with us. So why can't you say the right thing? Why can't you stop the Godfathers and the rest of them from having their way in imposing anyhow people for us? At the end of the day, they end up suffering.
Well, this is a whole lot for Nigerians, because we need our mindset to really, really change. And of course, let's know that the build-up to 2027 is really a few days. I like to refer to it as a few days, not months, because we're counting down to the primaries, and here we have the primaries across parties are being done. But let's also look at civil society groups have reportedly called for reforms within political parties, just like you mentioned. What specific reforms would you recommend to improve transparency during primaries, aside your reform calls? Which particular one would you say the parties should do in order to get the process right?
The reforms are many. The reforms are many, and I think the one that works is to allow a free and fair process. And under this free and fair process are several layers of things that need to be done.
Okay.
So I'll just summarize that they should allow a free and fair process.
Okay.
But then, why that is a difficult call is that our politics is shaped by interest. The godfathers that are there were looking at people they can impose that will be answerable to them at the end of the day. Because until we start having a system that is not juicy, start having a democracy that is not juicy, we keep on having this problem. Why are they imposing candidates? So that by the time you go there, you can be
make
making
returns
and all that. You understand? So I think it's a moral thing now, for the political parties to allow a free and fair process. But when we have greedy godfathers or incumbents that want to remain like Robert Mugabe, where are we going to start having our solution from? So we've done a lot of advocacy for reforms. Most of the content of the electoral act pushed by the civil society. But at the end of the day, what do we have? You see the same political class messing up all the
process
efforts that we've made.
Another issue we've heard is that of independent candidacy, where they feel people, if they are able to stand on their own, even aside political platforms, that we might have a better process and it's not going to be as rigorous or as expensive. What's your own stand on that particular suggestion?
The thing is that when it comes to the independent decision now is not voting decision now, inducement decision. Because see that over time now we're having Nigerians that are just ready to sell their vote, or even in advance. When you gather them, the question is how much is these people?
How much are they offering?
So if you come out as an independent candidate and you still don't have the financial muscle to fight those in the parties, you still lose with your independent candidature.
Well, there's a whole lot of
lose with your independent candidature, because why I'm changing it to May is that remember the young man from Kaduna then that is that's still in National Assembly now. He won under the Labour Party. So it was a bike ride and all that. So something of that nature. And during the last election, a lot of people actually won based on the
personality
and all that. So it's neither here or there. So it depends on how popular you are. For instance, now I used to tell politicians that look, it's better you buy the heart of the people than buy their vote. If you buy their heart,
it's easy to
play. They don't need much convincing. There are a lot of politicians that they don't even need to campaign. People will be begging them to come based on their pedigree,
the impact,
based on their performance and the like. Then the rest that think they are smart, they will win the election, they will retire to Abuja and stay for 4 years and go back towards the election. Those are people that need money to buy citizens, to buy votes and all that, because they are not performing. But those that are performing very well, any day.
One area of concern that we see around party primaries or the election build-up, which is the area of post-election or post-primary litigation. Before, once the primaries are done, just like I mentioned, some people have shown interest of excitement or shown express themselves to be excited, but some are still angered or bitter with the process. So we have the post-primary litigation that will always come up, which takes us back to the courtroom, the back and forth, and also elections will also bring us to the tribunal as well. So at almost every election cycle, parties
Of course, they will always convince you that you will win your case and they will drag you to the Supreme Court and you will be the one paying all the legal fee to prosecute that.
Now, looking at 2027, as we're wrapping up the conversation, are these primary elections an indication of what is to come in the 2027 general elections?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, because if talks can be invading polling units during primaries, then
what happens to the bigger space?
In the general election, we are going to have battalions of bandits, invading polling units. So everybody needs to sit up in terms of reorientation. The security agencies are still part of the election process. Should work with INEC, work with the communities in terms of protecting the sanctity of the election process, because all these talks are not from the moon. They are people we know. So in the community people can point, this is the talks, these are the people that always foment trouble during the election. So know what you do, put an eye on this person, go to his house 3 days with the election, search his rooms and everything to know, to see if they have weapons and all that, intelligence gathering and all that. And of course the people themselves should be able to get ready to defend their vote, because like as you said, if all these things are happening, what is going to happen during the 2027 election? So vote buying is going to be rife, because I always tell people that vote buying starts from the primaries. In fact, they make it look as if it's normal that they are giving delegates money. Money for what? It's vote buying. So the EFCC and other anti-graft agencies should, as a matter of necessity, invade most of all these political primaries and of course ensure that the vote buying and the like will not take place. But will they be able to do it? That's another question entirely.
But we also look at voter apathy. That's one thing we've had across, and that's why I talked about perception for citizens who come out to vote. But before you answer, let's talk about, we've seen realignments, coalition talks, defections, and renewed political alliances across the party lines, which is also coming up ahead of 2027, of course. How much of these movements are driven by ideology from your assessment as a civil society body, and how much is simply political survival, the build-up to all of this as we look forward to 2027 general election?
I think the coalition is about political survivalism than political ideology. It's all about, I've been mistreated in this particular political party, let me look for another family to belong to. It's about remaining relevant and, of course, holding on power. So we are still a long gap from political ideology, and I'm hoping that now that they are restricting the space for defection and all that, people will learn to be sitting in one particular political party and making it to work instead of
jumping around.
Because the major interest is how can we grab power in other part of the world. For instance, now, if you ask a typical person, how many political parties do we have in the US? They'll say the Democrats and the Republicans. But that's not the truth. We have many of them. So some political parties are just interested in ensuring that, okay, as far as councillorship is concerned, we are the one that will put it there. You understand? Based on what grassroots ideology, we want particular, we want to be concentrated on winning the, what do you call it, the councillorship within several communities. That's what they want. They don't want to aim at the presidency. Then during the election now, the Democrats or the Republicans can come and meet them and say, I want you guys to support us. But you see in Nigeria now, everybody wants to be president at the ruling party. If another party emerges after 2027 now, you see everybody grab to that party. So it shows political, ideological laziness among our political class. And we are looking at if Nigeria will start having a mind shift, start forming another political party that is not aiming to produce presidents, you understand? Because we see a fresh political party that has not even won a councillorship before, floating a president is wrong. Test your acceptability at the grassroots first. How acceptable are you? How many local government chairman can you present? How have they performed? So if you have a political system where genuine people can come out and say, okay, now we want to start controlling the grassroots. They produce councillors, produce local government chairman, and then maybe up to State House of Assembly, and stop at that. And all these people are performing over time. They don't need much convincing after 16 years to tell the voters that, look, vote for so thing. So what causes voter apathy is when over time they see that one, their vote will not be counted, which they are part of it, because by the time you are selling your vote, don't expect it to be free and fair. And of course, if political promises were not fulfilled over 4 years, they just expect them to come and be doing the same process again. Then the worst one is violence. So when people are not sure that their life will be saved at the polling units, they stay away.
I think safety speaks volume, and that's one of why I wrap this up with you. Basically, we've seen the primaries, and let's talk about the elite class and all the concerns raised. But with the concluded primaries across the party lines, do you see a meaningful progress for youth and women participation? Because we're talking about all-inclusive system, also
of course, people with
disability as well. Does this primaries really show that inclusive nature as we warm up or build up to 2027 election?
The answer is no. It has not shown that inclusive process. I think if you count across, I don't take up to 5 women have emerged in all these
primaries.
All these primaries in the National Assembly. We are looking at how many are there again? 360 and 109. So we've not seen. I've not heard anyway. And maybe they are not up to 5 that I will not to talk of people with disability. Then, as for youth, and as we said before, the cost of participation is too much.
It's expensive.
If not, maybe a party like Labour Party now, they say that they are allegedly giving out form for free. You know, a lot of political parties, the nomination form is high. How many youths can afford 10 million in Nigeria now? You know. So that is systematic exclusion that is taking place here. Then persons with disabilities. So now, just as they are fighting for special seats for women, I think there should be special seats for persons with disability as well, because they are vulnerable, and they should be encouraged to be part of it. We have about a large percentage of people with disabilities in Nigeria, and that they with disability doesn't imply that they are disabled in their brain. I've seen a lot of persons with disability that have done credible things, you know, awesome things and everything. And if they can achieve that in their private space, they should be able to do that
in the public space.
The public. And of course, if we are talking of special seat for women, there should be special seat for persons with disability as well.
As we wrap up, amidst all these dark clouds, we've identified the concerns and all of that. Looking towards 2027, what gives you hope that we can get the process right?
Well, what gives me hope is the capacity of Nigerians to say this is what we want, which we are at liberty to have it, because Nigeria is still a country that will practice democracy, whether you like it or not. You know? I represent the West African sub-region, 15 countries as we speak, and I know the kind of reports I get from other countries. So in some countries now, you see the incumbent, they will manipulate the Electoral Act and the Constitution for tenure and negotiation, or they'll clamp down on even the opposition party. You can't even talk. You can't even talk freely on air, as we are saying. So that gives me hope that yet we still want things to work in Nigeria. And of course, we should exploit this and do the right thing that we need to do. Everybody know the right thing they need to do. Understand? Hold the leaders accountable where they are not doing well. Praise them where they are doing well. And of course, play your part as a good citizen of Nigeria.
Well, once a very big thank you so much to our guest who has done justice to this conversation. Party primaries, of course, is the bedrock for me, the foundation for the political parties to stand strong and also give us an idea of what we should expect from them with the build up to 2027 general election. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us, and we look forward to seeing your experience from the West African region, being their regional secretary general at the West African Civil Society Forum. Bring such experiences to Nigerian space and give us an edge to what we need to change, what narratives need to change. Thank you so much, Mr. James Ugochukwu, for your time. We look forward to seeing you after the election, so we talk more about what's and what lessons we've learned as Nigerians ahead of 2027 or after the 2027 election. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, and what will happen across party lines and the political space, political party primaries remain a critical foundation of democratic governance because the credibility of elections often begins long before voters arrive at polling units. And of course, strengthening internal democracy, transparency, inclusion and accountability within political parties may ultimately determine the strength of Nigeria's democracy itself. And of course,
and that's a wrap on Global Morning. We go on a break. When we come back, our second conversation will be on the way.
Of course, we have other things lined up. Please stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Wake up with Global Morning, your daily guide to what's happening and making the rounds.
We delve into headlines, newspaper reviews, spot-on analysis, policies, current events, real talk, real issues that affect us all.
From the latest trends to the debate, every topic, every angle, Global Morning is where it all starts.
Global Morning,
For the latest issues,
always on point.
Watch Global Morning Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Global Television.
In an age of breaking news, you need a trusted source that prioritizes accurate, factual, and unbiased reporting. This is AM News, and I am Ubong Usoro.
On Global Television, our news is rooted in verified and authoritative storytelling that keeps you educated, informed, and enlightened on all the issues that matter to you. I am Sadia Yakubu. This is Midday News.
You can trust a multi-platform news broadcast real-time and fast-check stories for all the big local and foreign headlines round the clock. I am Ramsey Enoch Agbo. This is News Express.
Our array of anchors delivers the news to our teeming viewers, breaking it down with context and perspective. This is News Cycle on Global Television. I am Anieti Patrick.
And the flagship news is your hub for the day's most engaging stories. This is News Prime, and I am Jumai Manson.
Did you miss any of our news rounds? No worries. Catch up at 10 p.m. and midnight, 7 days of the week. I am Mukhtar Kasim.
Global TV is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. We're active across all social media platforms at Global TV NG.
Global TV News, accurate and unbiased. I'm Uyi Agmofwebe.
At Wichtech Cables, we don't just make cables, we deliver excellence. Our products are built with advanced technology, trusted for their unmatched quality and durability. With a wide range of cables, swift delivery, and continuous innovation, we stay ahead of the market demand. We are proudly Nigerian, fully indigenous, yet world-class. Backed by a professional team, strong technical support, and a deep commitment to customer satisfaction. Wichtech Cables is more than a brand, it's a promise. Wichtech Cables, quality cables better than the best.
At Erojim Shoe Factory, excellence starts from the ground up. Located at number 1 Pound Road behind Nigeria Correctional Service, Aba, Abia State. We produce 1,000...
Attention Nigeria! Something big is about to happen on global television. Something's about to happen on global television. A platform known for powerful conversations, breaking news, and national conversations that shape society.
But this time is different.
It's Children's Day! Yay! 27th of May, children will be taking over your screen for one special broadcast.
Oh yes, this Children's Day, we are running the show.
From news to sports to national discussions, children will lead conversations.
Because we're not too young to think, we're not too young to speak, and of course, not too young to lead conversations.
So, tune into Global Television's Children's Special Broadcast on 27th May. It promises to be exciting, emotional, funny, powerful, all at the same time. And who knows, you may just hear something you're not expecting from your children. I mean, something positive. Tune in.
Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times 276. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at Global TV NG.
We're still here, of course, on this Global Morning, where we want to bring you into the second discussion segment. And of course, it's the political build-up to 2027 general election, and every conversation around this time is with the build-up to that. And of course, today we're looking at towards 2027 on this particular segment, 2027 election, where we're looking at preventing political violence and national division. That's one of the focus, or the particular focus we're looking at on this particular segment, of course, Mukhtar.
Of course, you know, one common practice we see with elections are violence. And it's not unique to Nigeria. It's something that happens across the world. But of course, we as Nigerians, we have particular concern as to how that shapes our national consciousness and shapes our perception as people. So of course, we're looking on how to make sure that we curtail, if not reduce to the barest minimum, incidents of election violence across the country. Well,
just like Notary has mentioned, basically, as the political activities gradually begin to build ahead of the 2027 general elections, conversations around political tension, hate speech, electoral violence, and national unity are once again returning to the forefront. And Nigeria has witnessed different forms of election-related violence in previous election cycles, from inflammatory rhetoric and political intimidation to clashes between supporters, destruction of property, and in some cases, tragic loss of lives, of course.
And of course, we know democracy is built on competition and freedom of choice. But many Nigerians are questioning, asking very important questions like, can the country avoid a particular position where we have no divisions and no violence when it comes to our elections?
Well, there are also concerns about rising political intolerance, online misinformation, ethical and regional, narratives, and also the growing desperation where we have a whole lot of people being desperate about the process and already becoming visible across parts of the political space. And
of course, joining us for this conversation and the way forward is Dr. Petro Uzochukwu Marcel, and he's the chairman of the Rotary Action Group for Peace, Nigerian chapter, and he's also the head of mission for the Rotary District in Nigeria's 2023 general election. Thank you very much for joining us on the conversation, Doctor.
Thank you and good morning.
To see you. Let's set the tone on this particular conversation. Well, as conversations around the 2027 elections continue to grow, many Nigerians are already expressing concerns about political tension and possible violence. From your perspective and experience being the mission for observation, are these fears justified from what we see with the build-up to 2027 general election?
Well, thank you for having me once again. Well, I would say that with weekend or democracy comes competition, and has the tendency of having its fears and concerns and even violence, if you may. So such concerns far off. But I think it might be over-exaggerated than it is actually at the end of the day.
Now, you served as the head of mission for the Rotary District, Nigeria's 2027 election mission. So based on what you observed at that particular time and for the last election, what lessons do you think Nigerians should pay attention to already as we go towards 2027 general elections?
Yes, in 2023, we strictly observed through the peace lens, which had to do with the inclusive parts of the process, how secured, how people could freely exercise their franchise, etc. And we made salient recommendations to the electoral body, the federal government, of course, INEC specifically, and other key stakeholders. What we observed at that time, efforts have been made to address them with the advent of the new Electoral Act, but be that as it may, we expect or anticipate that a lot will be done in the field, aspects of vote buying, ballot box snatching, practice across the country. So yes, we are optimistic that it will be capped to the barest minimum in the 2027 polls, and let's see how that pans out.
To see that the process gets better and improved with the build-up. And from what we see from party primaries and from what we see from the expression of interest from across party lines, it shows that the competition is getting tough. Just like you said, it's part of it, this competition, which puts it out there. Would you say political violence in Nigeria is mostly driven by desperation for power or weak institutions, economic frustration from the citizens themselves, or a combination of several factors that once Nigerians or citizens really always push out to say it's time for the narrative to change as we push to 2027?
Well, Nigeria is a monotonous country. Narrowing it through that lens commonizes the whole thing, I would say. It's a cocktail of several ingredients. Identity politics is, of course, at its root. And from identity politics, you have aspects of ethno-religious and bias, which informs be it economic, contest and power extremism, and even other concerns by the electorate. So it's not just as simple as grievances or the need for change or domestic or internal party politics and things like that. No, it's really hydra-headed. But the good thing is that it's not insurmountable at the end of the day. It's about the key stakeholders, at every point playing their part, delivering the dividend of what is expected of them, and then it adds up to a larger whole. So basically, these things have come to stay. Identity politics or individualization of politicking is something that even in advanced democracies, it's still within them. These are ideals of democratic institutions, so we can't wish it away. But what matters most is that when the leaders are elected, they should do their best to deliver what is expected for them within the time frame that they are in office. That would take care of several concerns, be it on marginalization, be it the suspicion of exclusivity, so things like that really needs a continuous and concerted effort to pull down those fabrics.
Violence that we've seen a new dimension where concerns are growing around online hostility. We've seen issues about misinformation, fake news, and also inflammatory political content. So how dangerous has this become in the election season especially?
Wow, that is a dimension of violence that we are keeping a close watch at. In 2023, we carried out an interview with the U.S. Embassy Abuja here, where we trained media practitioners, content creators in Zamfara, in Adamawa, 5 states on this very issue, because we try to be proactive in our approach. As at that time, it wasn't as brazen as now. And now the advent of AI has normalized some of these online threats that we, tried to track a couple of years back. At the moment, disinformation, decontextualization, what you want to do that is really, really pervasive. Not just online in terms of the social media space, even the closed group social media space, the way fake news gets shared, get forwarded without confirmation or verification is really alarming. And of course, the contestation in politics also enables these things because oppositions want every avenue that they can explore and exploit and have the opposed groups. Is the duty as yourselves, all, to make sure we try to bring the truth to the fore, to make sure we remain proactive, because these individuals will do whatever and whatever it takes to get there in their own context, is not good for the society. So we must try to bring attention to these issues. So yes, it's on the rise. AI is making it worse, both deepfake, the video aspects of it, the text aspects of it, the programming aspects of it. So it's really, really on the rise, and it should be a concern to every well-meaning Nigerian.
You see it from that perspective, and you're able to walk us through how these things play out. But one issue that often comes up during elections is the language used by politicians and their supporters. We hear agenda setting, we hear use of words, sometimes it moves from issue-based to declaratory, or I'm looking for the perfect word to use. How much influence do political statements actually have on public behavior and political tension? Because that should also guide the mindset as we try to avoid the issue around national division, because we're pushing out for an elective process.
Well, That's a very good and important question. And this is where we try to hold those stakeholders accountable. These are not Nigerians. Let me use the phrase later. Mohammed Wada of blessed memory. These are not ordinary Nigerians, so they must be careful with what they say, and in the process where they are careless with their utterances, they should be held accountable. Because some of these things they say it from not always the angle of it, but then because audience have different degrees of understanding, they take it really. And these things come out of a life of his own, so that is why I think that to be held accountable, there should be legislation to that regard beyond just or caution or saying we condemn something. No, some of these are trying to be taken back and they do lots of damages. So I think these stakeholders sensitized and personally think unaware of the damage they cause, but it's of trying to have an edge over
coming from your end. I wish you could maybe step away from where you are a bit so we can get to hear you clearly. Mukhtar, we were speaking to our guests, and yes, all of this are major concerns as we push to the 2027 general elections. Just like he said, behavioral approach is very good. We need to change our mindsets. Also, the political class needs also be careful and relate their campaign while we move towards the time of campaign to issue-based, so that it doesn't instigate things that would alter or put thoughts in the minds of citizens because of interest that plays out in the long run.
One thing is these political actors, they are seen as models because a lot of followers idolize them. They see them as the perfect individuals, and whatever this person says
stands
is the truth. So if as a political actor, as a politician, you do not guard your rhetorics, your utterances, then you are culpable. In my opinion, I think you should also be held accountable, because all those things you say are things that might eventually inflammate the country, and we see where some politicians have made statements, and that singular statement spiraled beyond control and it boiled into a full-fledged conflict. So those are issues that political actors should always be cognizant of the fact that their words are considered by their followers as very sacrosanct, which is why they should build, like you said earlier, politics around issue-based. If you're campaigning, then you should do it around your own agenda, around the things that you intend to do to better the country. And you don't have to attack your opponent and go after his personality before you make your point. You could be very constructive in your criticism. If you have any criticism of your opponent, you could do that within the ambience of the law. You could do that within the stipulated guidelines. But when you go outside and you incite your followers to engage in physical violence, and that eventually leads to the loss of lives and properties, then I think actions should be taken. And of course, the Electoral Act has provided some of those things. But I think the political actors themselves, they need to do more than they have done in ensuring that we see a much more policy that is not heated, that is one that is rancor-free. I think the political actors have a lot more to do than we currently have seen.
Well, in as much as we would love our guest to speak to this issue, I hope his network is actually better off to speak to us, because he's making quite some essential points that we need to drive home in terms of the national divide. Because if we have a united front as a nation, it saves the face of the nation, the process, Nigerians not see the ideology around it. It's not a do-or-die affair, but a system that should play out basically. And we hope he can join us shortly as soon as he gets the clarity from the. But this time we're talking about the issue of words of mouth or languages used. We see sometimes that supporters interpret political comments more aggressively than they were originally intended to be. So this should be a guide.
And that's why it's very important for you to pay attention to your utterances, because you could sometimes, if you're ambiguous in the way you speak, you tend to be misunderstood, and then people would take that message, which maybe you said with a lot of innocent intentions,
Yes.
and then you turn it into something negative. But at the end of the day, because you are the person who said it, even if you eventually issue a disclaimer, that will be more like a face-saving mechanism or measure, because the real harm might have been done. Another issue which he spoke about is the one about the online space. So of course, those are issues that we have to talk about.
Okay, so our guest is back, and I'm sure this is better. The network is far better now. We can hear you clearly. Doctor, if you can hear me loud and clear, we're speaking about the language better. I see you clearer and better now. So we're talking about the language used by political class in terms of passing the information or the agenda to their supporters and also Nigerians as they get set for election nearing a year, of course, like we're pushing to 2027. Do you think the political leaders in Nigeria do enough to calm tensions among their followers based on the language they use and ideology they're trying to sell to get them into elective offices?
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry earlier. We know what network is like in Nigeria. Yes, the concerns about what the political actors say and do in the presence of their supporters is really concerning and should be prioritized in terms of holding them accountable. As much as that was said earlier, so really, it's a case of plausible deniability. They make some of these utterances, and when they are queried, they say, no, we didn't mean it that way. Of course, genuinely, they might not have meant it that way, but because of the different level of comprehension of their supporters, they take some of those words literally and run with it. And these things, you can't take it back. We've had some nasty utterances in the past and even ongoing that has not been withdrawn or taken back or simplified, rather watered down by these actors. And then it fuels, that ethno-religious dichotomy that we are struggling with, which is at the root cause of peacelessness in Nigeria. Nigeria is a fantastic country that has high ethno-religious background and pluralities. So whatever ideology you peddle or whatever division you sow takes off a life of its own. And these actors are doing extremely well at it, dividing us further and further away. But the problem is at the end of the polls, they either win or lose, but the seed they've sown will take decades to uproot. So those are the challenges, and that's why we personally think that these actors, there should be legislation that will hold them accountable. When you use strong words that instigates, words that divides, words that demeans, if you look at the genocide in Rwanda and other genocides, this is how it started. When they start using some of these words, they start seeing it as we versus them. It becomes something else that you cannot manage at the end of the day. So we need to nip it in the bud, not just by condemning it strongly. No, there should be legislation just like we have about social media now. You post some things, you get arrested. There be something like that, even stronger, for these key stakeholders. When they say certain things, they should be held accountable for what they said, because it affects our society at large.
If we want to follow in line with the peace keeping process and also the national unity instead of the divide across lines, across religion, and bringing forth hostility or disagreements of course, just because we want an election process. But Mukhtar wants to speak to you about other measures.
Another agenda we look at is security agencies and their role that they play in the elections generally. So looking at 2027. How important is conflict prevention? Because we've heard that it's better to preempt and try to curtail this conflict in the bud before they happen. So how do you think the agencies saddled with these responsibilities can be ahead of their mandates, not just managing the conflict when it happens, but trying to be preventive before we get to that particular stage?
I really must commend our security agencies. They are doing exceptionally well. Unfortunately, the system and society at large is not making the work any easier for them. For starters, we're under police, we're under secured in terms of manpower, you know. And then security is not just about men in boots, it's not all about the kinetic approach. There's a human dimension of human security, which is even more important than the kinetic aspect. And when that human security is largely missing, the work becomes twice as hard for the kinetic personnel to carry out their duties. And this is where my concerns lie. What is the economy like for today's Nigerians? The youth, the able-bodied men and women that are trying to survive. These gaps makes the securitization of Nigeria more difficult for these men. I can tell you that there's going to be vote by in the next election because of the economy. I can tell you that there's going to be violence because of the gaps that the economy has created. There's going to be willing hands that will be recruited into violence because they need to make ends meet. Mind you, it's not excusable. There are other alternatives to violence or to be involved in crime. That I agree. But what has the society enabled? So these are the concerns that I look at this security personnel, the police, civil defense, the military, all of them, the vigilantes even. And it becomes a Herculean task for them to secure Nigeria. Also, keep in mind that there are pluralities of gang groups. We are still battling with the violence extremism posed by the Boko Haram, the bandits, the gang groups, the cultists, the everyday criminals, the armed robbers. And now you have that political dimension, which has lots of incentives for the perpetrators. So it's really humongous for a few personnel to handle. Having said that as well, there are some proactive steps that needs to be made in the now and in the future. We need to de-incentivize our political offices. There's too much incentives to become a Nigerian politician. That gross lack of accountability in terms of resource expenditure, resource allocation, it needs to be more stringent. We also need to let perpetrators of vote trading, whether buyers or sellers, they need to face the full wrath of the law. Ballot box snatchers, other thugs that are used during the electoral process. When they start feeling the full wrath of the law, the incentives to get involved will be lowered. And coming to our security personnel especially, they need to be better armed, better equipped, better trained. The military is getting more involved with civilian activities. They need to also be trained on how to handle the civilian population so that human rights organizations will not crucify them, for being high-handed. They are not trained to handle civilians, but we see them because the police, the numbers are fewer by the day. We see them increasingly involved. So we need to address these issues in the roots.
Space of the political space actually very less juicy. Maybe that will also change the mindset of people. I've had this conversation across stakeholders, and this is one of the reforms that has been called out for, that until that mindset is changed, maybe then alone we can have the accountability, just like you mentioned, and a standpoint to this comment. But in 1 minute, I just wanted to speak to us about the observer standpoint. How important is public trust in institutions like INEC, and just like the security agencies you talked about during elections? I've been on the field in elections. I've seen a whole lot play out, and of course we do the observing from that, and then do the reports to tell the story, and hopefully the compliance, that's those who put them to book, get to do the right thing. So what's the place of public trust in these public institutions?
That cannot be overstated. INEC is the chief body to determine who leads the political space of Nigeria. So it's an institution that is very critical to the democratic process of Nigeria, the democratic survival of Nigeria, the democratic stability and sustainability of Nigeria. So it's very important that the institution is highly trusted, and that trust has to be earned, and they've done so much over the years, and we are advocating that they are fully autonomized so that they can have that leverage to really work without interference. It's about form and substance and perception. One thing is to do the right thing, and another thing is for those who you are working for to think and see that you are doing the right thing. So I think INEC is suffering more from the perception of Nigerians more than they are suffering from their own undoing. It's really about that perception that we really need to work on. And that perception is because of how the leadership emerges, how the institution is funded. So there is nothing INEC could do to really shake off that stigma that they are biased, because the assumption is he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So till they become fully autonomized, that perception will always, that news will always be around their neck that they are doing someone's bidding here or there. But be that as it may, it's a work in progress. Our nascent democracy is growing and metamorphosizing. It can only get better with concerted efforts from people like you and I and other Nigerians to see that we help these various institutions to, maintain our democracy and take it to the next level.
Someone who is involved in the peace advocacy, and we've had INEC say they can't do it alone. We've all got to put hands together. Now let's look at the civil society. What roles can they play in making sure that the process is as peaceful as possible?
As well as the religious leaders and the community organizations, how they can also collectively put this thought together for us to have a national front, a united front, basically. That's just in 1 minute, please.
Yes, the civil society is doing so much. You have no idea. It's doing so much. I think the civil society, of course, over the years is doing more than is being given credit for. We are involved and we see these various actors, from the traditional institution to religious institutions to NGOs, local NGOs, INGOs, CBOs, community-based organizations. The list goes on and on. In both observation, in both collaboration, participation. Like Rotary, for example, we've organized lots of capacity building for the electorate, sensitization, in partnership with, of course, INEC, in partnership with Human Rights Commission, in partnership with Federal Ministry of Education, because these are key stakeholders that are needed to sensitize the public about decision-making, about voting processes, about, the list goes on and on, even their human rights, for them to know that even the security agencies they are coming up against on that day have their own rights as well. Whereas you have your rights as an electorate, they have their rights as a key stakeholder in the electoral process. So you need to be informed and work accordingly. And at the end of the day, nobody feels undone by other person's right. So the CSOs are doing so much, and I think we can only encourage the government to understand that CSOs are a key player in the development process, not antagonists, not at all. We are trying to help government fill in the gap where there are gaps in governance, where there are gaps in technical capacity, where there are gaps in other places. That's where CSOs come in and try to work collaboratively. Of course, also as gatekeepers, to see that the right things are done. But we know that these things, there's no perfect situation anywhere in the world. But because Nigeria is our own, CSOs are working together with the government to try to actualize what we think is the global best practice, or should be the global best practice in all of these processes, be it the peace process, be it the electoral process, be it the security process, be it the human aspects of the whole thing. CSOs are embedded in every facet of the processes.
Let's wrap up with this. If Nigerians truly want a peaceful and credible election in 2027, what are those actions that should be taken in just 1 minute?
Like now.
Okay, I'll treat this as rapid fire. If we want a peaceful process in 2027, there needs to be lots of sensitization. I'm talking about letting people know what the new electoral law holds. We are currently working with INEC to that regard because we think there's need to step down the contents of that policy to the grassroots. Additionally, there's need to do lots of voter education. 2023 till now, we have different generations that are up to the voting age that needs to be brought up to speed on how to use the beavers, on what to expect from IRA, on how to protect their mental health from some of the hate speech and misinformation that is being peddled by some of these political actors. And on that day, especially, they need to understand that there will be losers, there will be winners. So there's also need to prepare their mind to that regard as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for speaking to the issues and also walking Nigerians through what their mindset should be towards national unity and not having a divided front, and also preventing the violence as we build up to the 2027 general election. Mutara.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for those very valuable insights. And of course, it was a very interesting conversation. And I believe those are recommendations, if put in place, we'll see a better election that is more credible, much more peaceful in 2027.
Well, 2027 is here. I want to say a very big thank you to Rotarian Dr. Petro Ugochukwu for his time with us, speaking all the way from Jos. Thank you so much for being a part of Global Morning, and we count down to 2027 and seeing a peaceful process. Thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Amazing. It's been an amazing time here on Global Morning. For our discussions, see that a whole lot of mindsets are building towards positivity, an inclusive nature, and also a rank-up-free electoral process, and also building trust and confidence in the Independent National Electoral Commission, because one thing is perception, one thing is the citizens trusting the electoral umpire who will conduct the process, and also everyone bringing their experience and as a multi-stakeholder process that involves everybody.
And of course, trust we know is earned over time, and INEC is showing us that we've got to trust them. And I believe with the elections that we have seen, the primaries and all of those things, it will furthermore entrench the trust that Nigerians have in them ahead of 2027. And of course, talking about peaceful elections, this is something that is not negotiable. We know it's not a possibility that you have 100% violence-free election. It's not done anywhere in the world. We only have the barest minimum. So in Nigeria here, we want to see a replica of that particular situation where, and like I always like to quote the INEC chairman, he says he wants an election where the loser will confidently
shake hands
and congratulates the winner that this election was credible, I lost, I own it, and I congratulate you. That's the election I want to see in 2027.
Well, that's what we want to see in 2027. Well, that brings us to the wrap on Global Morning. Amazing time here with us. We've had a lot of discussions on news and current affairs from the dailies, politics, and of course, we really want to see a very beautiful process of 2027 election. That's why we thought it was timely to have this conversations. An amazing job done by our guests. Thank you so much for your insight. With our earlier guests, we had Mr. James Ugochukwu, who came to speak about the role and how the primaries actually set the tune for 2027. Of course, we also have Dr. Petro also coming, and they seem to have a similar name, Ugochukwu. So they have a mindset to see that we have a credible process. Well, I am Aniete Patrick, and of course,
I am Mukhtar Kasim.
And we'll leave you to warm up your day with this aerobics as we wrap up the program. Please.